Tao, welcome, welcome. Nice to see you here.
Great to be here.
Hi, Yuping, welcome, and Fanzang. Do you guys want to quickly mics and do a sound check?
I can't go on video because I'm actually outside right now, but does that work?
That works loud and clear. Great, thank you, Yuping.
Hello, David. Nice
Hi,
to
Fan.
meet you.
Nice to see you. We hear you loud and clear.
Hello, David. Serving.
Hi, welcome. Welcome, welcome. We hear you loud and clear.
Hello, David. Daniel.
Daniel, nice to see you.
Likewise.
Is this are you in Geneva right now?
I'm actually in London, not far off.
Excellent. And that background is where is that? Is that your headquarters?
It's something taken off Google Images. So I couldn't even
Google Images are not Bing Images. Are you serious?
Don't tell them I told you that.
That's big trouble, Daniel. Excellent. Well, welcome, Daniel. I'm really excited to have you here. Colleagues, we're going to get it away in like 2 minutes or so. People are still coming in, and there's many people who have signed up. So we're just going to let people come in. So just give us 2 more minutes. It's okay. Iyad, welcome. Nice to see you here. And Cyril, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Hi, how are you, David?
Very well, thanks.
Hi, everyone. Hi, David.
Hi, Marcel. Nice to see you. And I see other colleagues. I just wanted to do another quick check with, I saw a familiar name and wanted to check if she or he wanted to do a mic check, but it's now lost on me. So we'll keep waiting. Ray Go, I wanted to welcome you, give you a bit of a shout out. Ray is one of our key brains in our ICT side of the house. Welcome, Ray. Nice to have you here.
Well, David, we've got 80 participants now. It's looking pretty good. Maybe we'll leave 1 more minute. What do you think about cameras, David?
I like cameras. I like to see people's faces. But this is one of those tricky policy questions, isn't it? And you put that on me to start with.
Well, I just thought you might have a view. I think cameras are desirable for those who can, but obviously optional if you can.
Yeah, that's a good policy. And if you're talking, I think it's great if you can put your camera on at minimum. So if we've got 3 more seconds, I just wanted to welcome Helen. Nice to see you, Helen. I see Marie-Ange is here as well. Nice to see you. Stephanie, welcome, welcome. It's great to have you. And Ilian, excellent to see you as well. Welcome, welcome.
Wonderful to be here.
So I think we can get started, right, David?
Sounds good, yeah. Take it away, please.
Great. Well, I have the honor of kicking us off. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you from wherever you're joining. My name is Robert Opp. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for UNDP. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the workshop today. Just one kind of housekeeping thing right up front. We are recording this session, so please, if you're not comfortable with that, just be aware that we are recording. So thanks for joining us today at this workshop, which is really the second meeting of the Coalition for Digital Environmental Sustainability, or CODES. And for those of you who have joined us previously, you will know that CODES is an initiative that is being championed by the government of Kenya, the German Environment Agency, UBA, the United Nations Environment Program, Future Earth, International Science Council, and UNDP, where I'm from. We launched CODES as part of the SG's Digital Cooperation Roadmap, which the Secretary General of the UN launched last year, and it really is about looking at major elements of digital cooperation and then constructing multi-stakeholder roundtable processes to look at each one of these. And CODES is something that together this group of co-champions decided to put forward and be part of that digital cooperation roadmap process. The objective of CODES itself is to shape digital transformation to a whole of society and environmentally sustainable direction, as well as mitigate the environmental footprint of digital technologies and ICT overall. So today is an exciting day because we're going to have lots of interaction. We really want to hear feedback and to gather intelligence that we can feed into this draft report that has been sent out or put on SparkBlue, the platform that we're using for consultation. The draft report is called Digital Planet for Sustainability, and it's what we consider to be one of the first deliverables of this overall process. But it's really important that we get your feedback on the report because we need to have that sort of move toward getting all of the different elements of people who are working in this space across all sorts of different angles and really build it into the report. And then the report becomes the platform for an action plan going forward for the coalition. So we have a fairly significant amount of time for the session today, and I already see we're at 98 participants, and I want to thank you already for joining us and taking your precious time to spend with us. We're going to divide the meeting today into a few different parts. So first, we're going to have a couple opening framing remarks from the UN Tech Envoy's office and one of our co-champions, Future Earth, that's going to give a heads up on where the paper has come from. Then we're going to have a presentation on the key messages from the paper. And then we're going to have a chance to get some high-level feedback from you. We're going to do a little bit of polling from the crowd, as it were. And then we're going to go into breakout working group sessions. And that will allow us to hear in a more in-depth way from all of you. And then we'll wrap up and decide on the next steps. So as I mentioned at the beginning, for those who have joined, we are recording this session, so please be aware of that. And with no further ado, I would actually like to turn over to kick off the meeting to Yuping Chan, who is from the UN Office of the Tech Envoy, who I understand is joining us on a leave day today. So thank you and apologies, Yuping, but we're delighted to have you with us. Over to you.
Thank you, Rob. And I really apologize for not being able to be on camera because I'm actually between places right now and I'm sitting in the middle of Union Square Park, joining all of you. But I really wanted to be here today because for those of you who don't know me, I'm from the Office of the Tech Envoy, as Rob has mentioned, and we're very excited that CODES has actually launched this journey of really addressing the nexus between sustainability, digital, and the environment. And as Rob said, it is a part of the Secretary General's roadmap. It wasn't actually a work stream per se. And so we're so grateful to all of you and the CODES co-champions for really taking it upon yourself to drive this forward and make concrete contributions to make sure that the implementation of the Secretary General's vision for a digital future really does robustly encompass the element of environment and digital. So that's really where I want to kick off, to say that we are immensely grateful to the co-champions and the enthusiasm of all of your participants and all attending today to really make a significant contribution in this area, which we think will be very helpful in framing a lot of the broader discussions. That brings me to my first point, this issue that a lot of the Secretary General's roadmap, which I'm not sure, I think many of you might have read, but maybe others are not familiar with, is very inextricably connected to the issues of the environment. So for instance, at the recent President of the General Assembly debate 2 weeks ago on digital cooperation and connectivity, where member states and stakeholders were talking about the importance of universal connectivity, digital inclusion, bridging the digital divide, there was a clear sense in which this also had to be in a sustainable framework and also discussing the impact that it would have on the environment. So the Secretary General's roadmaps, other streams about promoting digital capacity building, promoting trust and security, promoting digital inclusion and achieving universal connectivity, bringing all the unconnected online by 2030, have a strong element of ensuring that this is done in a sustainable manner. And I think this is where your work comes in. So that will be a very important contribution to the overall implementation of the roadmap itself. My second point, I think, is that this is actually an area that the Secretary General has put very high priority on. In his State of the Planet address last year, he said that 2021 would be crucial for the international community in terms of addressing the planetary emergency that we're facing. That there are a number of very key events coming up, COP26, the Oceans Conference, where really the focus for 2021 has to be on addressing what we owe to the planet. And so again, this is where your work is so crucial. The Secretary General has also remarked on how the climate and the environment, as well as digital technologies, are the two issues that are foremost on his mind, where he thinks the United Nations can really act as a convening platform to address these global challenges, where he thinks that humanity's response will really define our future. So again, this is where the nexus of digital and environment, your precise work, really fits in to the Secretary General's call for action. My third point, I think, that I will make quite quickly and then finish so that there'll be more than enough time for this very important discussion and interaction, is that the multi-stakeholder approach that you're embracing here today, a collaborative, inclusive means of really looking into this issue, not just from the perspective of governments, but also from the private sector, from civil society, from the technical experts, from academia, really coming together to brainstorm and find a collective solution is very important. And so often at the United Nations, because we are fundamentally a state-based institution or have grown up in very conventional, traditional ways of thinking, that's really how we approach global challenges. But when it comes to digital and the environment, it's not really the usual way of working that has to proceed. And we really need to find innovative and creative ways of collaborating. So CODES's approach and how we've all come together today, and the way in which the CODES co-champions have really been promoting an interactive engagement that is open and really welcoming of all, constantly sort of inviting new ways of contributing and challenging each other, is really very exciting for us. And I really hope that it can be sort of a role model, a template, an example that the rest of the UN system can look to, not just in digital, but perhaps in other global challenges as well. So I'll end there, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion today. The Office of the Tech Envoy is always open to any of the stakeholders on this issue, environment, digital, or anything else. So please feel free to reach out to us at any time. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, Yuping. And again, thank you for joining us on your leave day, and our gratitude to your family as well for putting up with that. All right, so the next just part of our opening here is to turn over to one of the co-champions. Our next speaker is Eliane Ubalijoro, who is the Global Hub Director in Canada for Future Earth and Executive Director of the Sustainability in the Digital Age Initiative. And Eliane, as I mentioned, has been really one of our co-champions in the whole effort. So Eliane, over to you.
Thank you, Robert. So I'd just like to first thank all of you for being here today. It's always a pleasure to interact. I'm just looking at the chat and the wonderful messages, and I'm just feeling a lot of gratitude for all the people I don't know that I'm meeting and relating to for the first time, and for all of those that we already have touched base. So thank you all for being here, and I welcome you on behalf of all the co-champions, namely UNDP, the International Science Council, the German Environment Agency, the Ministry of Environment and Forestry of Kenya, and of course, Future Earth and Sustainability in the Digital Age that I represent. So the CODES initiative aims to bring together stakeholders from the public and private sectors, academia, civil society who work on environmental sustainability and digital transformation. At this nexus, they all work together to coordinate efforts, share lessons learned, as well as mobilize resources and political commitment for action. The key outcome will be a shared acceleration plan for digitalizing environmental sustainability. As a leading global multi-stakeholder process, we are grateful to all of you who have been participating actively on Spark Blue to share transformative ideas, initiatives, and have encouraged our possibility to dream collectively. It is a privilege to have all of you take part in the series of events Codes is leading or engaging in with others to firmly anchor environmental sustainability needs within the UN Secretary General's digital cooperation map. The digital transformation and the sustainability transformation are the two fundamental forces reconfiguring our times. These forces are interconnected with each other and are accelerating the world to operate as an interconnected network. Global risks are increasingly interlinked. The global pandemic is a salient example of this, but it is not the only one. And of course, evidence of the global network we are able to gather in through digital technologies is undeniable. Our being together today is a testament to the power of virtual connectivity and the power of convening for good. Our world is changing and we're faced with opportunities and challenges. Our goal for today's event is to start gathering our collective intelligence as we strive to get the fundamentals right. As technology accelerates, we also need to accelerate and strengthen our networks into relationships that ensure that no one is left behind. Part of this is about mindsets leveraging digital technology for ourselves and future generations as we ensure we are all able to live sustainable livelihoods within planetary boundaries. We must also understand how we are both driving and experiencing digital transformations that are completely changing the status quo. Another part is to co-create an enabling environment that aligns policy incentives, finance, power, and everything necessary for infrastructure. Digital does not need to be shiny. It needs to be effective and designed for everyone in mind, particularly those in the margins. We also need to make sure that as we leverage digital, that we do not substitute it for our collective wisdom. Finally, we must realize that digital transformation is not static or linear concept. And this is something to keep in mind as we work to ensure that we work towards living in harmony with nature and striving for equity, diversity, and inclusion to ensure all are welcomed and empowered on this collective journey. This requires us to question how we bring in gender and marginalized communities and how that diversity ensures that we are moving forward in an unbiased way that is sustainable because we are not leaving anyone behind and we're able to hold the collective tensions that this diversity requires us to hold so that we have creative and innovative solutions moving forward. How we can steer the transformations underway to build a world where differences and similarities among people are valued and supported with access to leadership, power, participation, and opportunities open to all. As we think about how to get the fundamentals right, a big piece is the need for shared language. Global challenges can only be addressed through global understanding. So in an effort to start building or discovering this shared language, we're striving to place values at the heart of the work we're doing. COVID has been a stress test for how we address global systemic challenges through shared values. This is why we're seeking to co-design an approach that will translate values into a new culture at the nexus of digital transformations and environmental sustainability. We aim to create an opportunity to bring values, motivation, competencies, and implementation together so we can strengthen diversity as a baseline principle for our participative approach within the coalition. So to conclude, codes seek to co-design an approach that will translate values into this new cultural code of digital environmental sustainability. Codes is not only a think tank, it's an opportunity to bring values, motivation, and competencies together so we can strengthen diversity as our baseline. And the challenge is how do we ensure that all that has remained unseen and unheard and requires amplifying marginalized voices gets empowered through codes? How do we ensure that the billions of people that are not digitally connected become literate and agents for change and work collectively with all of us? For me, this is not only a question of inclusiveness, it's a question of how do we bring back the dignity of all people and also respect for nature as we become the ancestors that are the future generations that will live on this planet require us to be. Thank you.
Thanks, Eliane. I think really relevant words, and couldn't agree with you more on the elements of being inclusive and the digital is not just there to be shiny. Digital is something to be effective. So, and as you mentioned, Eliane, this is really about looking at how we can gather voices, gather people's perspectives, and then move forward with that. And the first step of this is this draft report that we've been working on. And so I'd like to turn now to our two principal authors of the report, Jason Jabor and Stephanie Taylor. Jason, Stephanie, I'm not sure which one of you is going to start, but over to you.
Thank you, Rob. Yes, I will be presenting the deck that I've prepared for today. So first, yes, I'd like to echo what you said and what Eliane said. It's very exciting to be on this call with 113 different perspectives at this point. And I am representing, next slide, please, Raina. So I'm representing the codes writing team, but I am by no means am I the sole member of this team. I have many amazing. We've been working on it together for several weeks now, Jason and I, and there's been a great cooperation from all of these organizations. So thank you very much for that. So. This presentation will be just an overview of the key messages in this report as we have prepared them so far. Before moving forward, I'd also like to just emphasize that this is a living document and a draft. So we're humbly presenting it to you with the hopes of making it even better in collaboration with everybody on this call. So thank you for your patience and for your input in advance. So, the introduction we see here, there's followed by a what's at stake section. Then we move to 3 strategic shifts or interwoven dynamics that we'll need to focus on as we continue to digitalize. What follows is an action agenda and a commitment framework with some suggestions and hopefully sort of catalysts for discussion. And finally, a conclusion, which is about seizing the opportunity we have. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in the introduction, the key message that we are trying to set out is the choice we have is to continue with business as usual amid an environment of worsening crises, or use the tools we have available to us to transform our future. Next slide, please. So we make this point by starting by saying that, pointing out that COVID has really laid bare both our vulnerabilities and our potential. It's really made clear the inadequacy of profit-oriented solutions, vulnerability of our hyper-connected societies that are reliant as we are on digital communication infrastructures. On the other side of the coin, there is great potential for us to meet the major challenges that await us. Open science has facilitated the scientific community to develop a vaccine in less than a year, in record time. So digital technology can provide a pathway to sustainability. The Future Earth, our colleagues at Future Earth have developed a report identifying 4 digitally empowered capabilities that are currently disrupting our global systems, as you'll find in the draft, more details. But in order to channel these trends to advance sustainability, it's our job to address the fact that digitalization so far has actually amplified inequalities. So this is seen in widening income gaps, deepening exclusion and discrimination, and diminishing agency all over the world. So next slide, please. As we've heard from, last slide, please. Thank you. Sorry, the next slide, please. Thank you. So as we've heard from our colleagues, CODES has emerged from the Secretary General's Roadmap for Digital Cooperation, seeking to advance collective action on digitalizing environmental sustainability. So we believe that the place for us to start is to recognize that access to digital infrastructure is a universal basic human right. Next slide, please. So the what's at stake section, we want to argue that, to reiterate previous work that's been done that argues that inequalities in our societies mirror planetary imbalances. And digital infrastructure that is enabling to everybody is needed to make changes necessary to ameliorate both. Next slide. So this section makes that point by starting out by saying business as usual isn't working. Our economic activity, and more importantly, the idea that it is only limited to us, has led to the widespread and catastrophic degradation of our planet. Instead, we need to see our activity as one part of a larger Earth systems economy involving natural, social, and human capital, as scientists have been urging us to do for decades. So as we digitalize, the major challenges to address are that about 47% of the world remains offline. And with every global crisis, their access is further destabilized. Most of these are from less developed countries, which means that their voices are heard less strongly in the global conversation. And finally, common enabling digital infrastructure is needed to achieve collective action in our world where power no longer resides only in nation states. Next slide, please. So part 3 is a discussion of 3 interwoven dynamics or strategic shifts, which we need to focus on as we plan for the future of digitalization. They are reimagining core incentives underlying business and social models, building sustainable digital infrastructure, and shaping digital innovations toward a common vision or visions. Next slide, please. So the first, reimagining core incentives underlying business and social models. This section argues that it's crucial to leverage, we must leverage digital technologies to influence a shift in governance and leadership and reimagine core incentives underlying key business models. Next slide, please. So for decades, scientists and environmentalists have been unable to realign our focus toward environmental sustainability. Currently, less than 2% of global capital is aligned toward ESG principles. So to move forward, there's a necessary reorientation of values needed toward a scientifically informed vision of Earth systems. As digital transformation cannot be seen as just an opportunity to speed up economic activity. Rather, there's the opportunity to hard code environmental values into existing digital technologies. We're seeing some nascent attempts, efforts by big tech companies, which should be encouraged. And just to note here that we are hoping to add a paragraph specifically about how the scientific community will contribute to this incentive shift. So that's a gap that we are aware of, and we'd love to have your input on how to fill it. Next slide, please. So the second interwoven dynamic argues or is about building sustainable digital infrastructure. So this section argues that adaptive, inclusive, accessible digital infrastructure will ensure digitalization benefits the whole of society. This infrastructure must be created, powered, and managed in a sustainable and climate safe way. Next slide, please. So as we've seen, digitalization is happening unevenly. Of the about 60% of the world who are online, 90% of those live in highly developed countries. We've also seen that digitalization contributes to knowledge gaps within and between countries and communities. And shockingly, half the women on the planet have no internet access. So as we strive for better access, we have to keep in mind not exceeding planetary boundaries. So digitalization has been shown to be problematic for both Earth and human development. And the 3 challenges that we want to address as we move forward here are greening ICT, Currently, ICT's carbon footprint is 3% of annual greenhouse gas emissions. E-waste is the world's fastest growing domestic waste stream. 2019 e-waste numbers smashed records. And finally, as we move past fossil fuels, ICT supply chains will become even more important because they're mineral reliant and have many complex stages. Next slide, please. So the third dynamic is shaping digital innovations toward a common vision or visions. And the thesis statement of this part is that digital innovations, if based on shared values, have the potential to solve sustainability challenges as well as drive fundamental systemic changes. Next slide, please. So here we have 8 acute interventions in this section. You can see them here. I will just give a very short overview of our thinking on each one. The focus of this section is towards solutions rather than just sort of elucidating the problem. And we have a little ways to go still on that, but I'm hoping you'll bear with us. So circular economies. The circular economies allow products and components to be tagged, tracked, and traced through their entire life cycles. A more circular economy could cut emissions drastically by over 50% in the EU by 2050. Another intervention could be regarding vulnerable populations and weather events. So innovations in the field of disaster forecasting can lead to risk reduction and the potential to mitigate impact on vulnerable populations, which are especially at risk of extreme weather events. Renewable energy. We focus here on 3 green technologies that will be critical for realizing a net zero carbon future over the century. They are wind, solar, and energy storage. Now, currently costs are dropping. So if we're able to let new energy technologies develop at early best rates of growth, we'll be able to cut energy-related emissions in half by 2030. The next section is smart buildings and cities. So smart buildings and cities that are comprised of them can learn and anticipate usage rates. And this ultimately can contribute to over 2 gigatons of emission cuts by 2050. Next, we have new ways of connecting to the electrical grid. So in remote areas, new technologies have enabled previously unfeasible ways of connecting to the grid, for example, mini grid programs have been extremely successful. And next is the food systems. So digital technologies can hugely benefit, in particular, the field of agriculture, regarding water efficiency and reducing the use of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. Next is data. This is just a tiny snapshot, but DT has opened up new ways for us to access and comprehend information, as well as participate in scientific discovery and solve problems in the last mile. There's a lot more to be said here, and then finally, the gender divide. So we've seen that digital technologies offer solutions, but only if we have tools, funding, and safe learning spaces supported by public and private sectors. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the action agenda and commitment framework is based around the idea that digital technologies are not ends in and of themselves, but the solutions we use them to develop must reflect a new set of inclusive values. Next slide, please. So we propose 6 common values that we can base these new technologies on, and hopefully also recalibrate existing technologies to be better reflective of. So prioritizing equity, dignity, and justice, adjusting our collective valuation of social, natural, human, and financial capital, insisting on transparency in digital algorithms and business models, acting on the belief that digital technologies can empower and nudge people toward sustainable choices, achieving collaboration between public and private sectors to create business models for digital public goods, and progressing toward a decentralized and distributed governance framework to keep pace with the speed of digital technology. Next slide, please. And then these are the 6 priorities we've isolated for transformation. And these are very much up for discussion. And we hope you will have a particular input here. Next slide, please. So our conclusion is that our societies, markets, governments, and lives must, collective lives, I guess, must be built on the values that we espouse in this paper. The ideas have proved their worth during COVID-19. We've seen that we all have to work together, whether it's on a national level, a personal level, community level, in order to make it through global crises. And the lesson we learned from COVID is applicable to the environment crisis as well. We have to address together the issues of planetary change and human development. And no one is safe unless we are all safe. And there you have it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I'm sure that you'll agree that it's really a lot of work that's been done and a lot of ground covered. And I'm not sure that there is another document out there that tries to bring all the strands of these 2 major trends of digital and sustainability together. So, you know, and really kind of looking at that piece of values and how we coalesce around values, that's really going to be the discussion in the working groups that are coming up right away. I see in the chat there's a question about when is it time to have input, and we're getting there. Just hang with us for just one more bit, and then we're going to go into breakout groups to be able to get your input on these different pieces. And so with that, it's a pleasure to turn over now to perhaps the person who's known the best among us all by all of you, David Jensen of the UN Environment Program, who's the coordinator of the Digital Transformation Task Force there. And David's going to take us through the process going forward, and then he's going to kick off some of the feedback from you in terms of high-level overview questions. So David, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Rob. I'm putting into the chat right now the details for the Mentimeter that we're about to undertake. And the best way to do this Mentimeter is to keep your main screen on if you can, and to grab your mobile and to answer the questions through your mobile. So what's going to happen is we'll ask the question, answer it in your mobile, and the result will be back in this main screen. So if colleagues can just, there are 2 ways you can access the Mentimeter. There's either to the direct link or there's the code. So if you're on your mobiles, go to www.menti.com, and the code is 80182868. It's there in the chat, so just have a look. So I'm going to give colleagues just 30 seconds to grab their phones and to hook into the platform, and then I'll get started. But while we're waiting for colleagues to get ready, let me just say I've been in the UN system for quite a long time, and this is probably the most exciting process I've ever been a part of. I'm honored, absolutely deeply honored to be a part of it. And it really is kind of shaping the digital future we want to see. What I love about this particular space is just how collaborative it is. The collaboration between the different codes champions, all of the experts out there, and all the people that have been driving this agenda for the last couple of years is really inspiring. And I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody that we are really trying to give you a voice in this process. We're really trying to wrap these different strands together and project that to the world. And that's a humbling process, but it's exceptionally exciting. So I just wanted to say how proud I am to be here with you and to be trying to give everybody a voice in this process. Hopefully people are now connected into the Mentimeter. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and going through going through the survey. So just give me one more second. So Rob, can you just confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, we can, David.
Okay, great. So the whole purpose of my presentation is to follow on from Stephanie. I just want to walk you through how we're going to continue this co-design process and what we're trying to get to, right? What's the final goal that we're trying to achieve? And as Stephanie alluded to, we're trying to get to a shared vision and an acceleration plan. We actually want to come up with a very concrete way to catalyze change in different areas of the economy to really accelerate this connection between digital transformation and environmental sustainability. So we want to get to an action plan, and that's our core goal. So right now we've just completed phase one, and that was the co-champions came together and they've drafted this zero draft report. And as was mentioned, this is really a straw person, right? We've done these kind of collective intelligence processes before, and we find that it's really best if you start with something to react to rather than a sort of a blank canvas. So this is kind of based on our best practice. We're trying to summarize the issues in this piece, but this is really meant as a zero draft for your reaction and for your validation and for your further elaboration. So none of this is set in stone. This is really clay for you to mold. So that's now with you, and we will be working in this meeting, but also for the next 2 weeks. We've opened up on Spark Blue a consultation process where we've uploaded the report and where we're offering obviously a chance to do further feedback, much more detailed feedback than you can do here. So we basically have this collective intelligence process as part of phase two, which is composed of this meeting plus 2 weeks of online dialogue. So that's going to basically run through May. Then phase three, once we have kind of that process and the next version of the report crafted, we're going to go to phase three, which is conducting more sort of institutional consultations, reaching out to key institutions in this space, looking for their feedback and ultimately looking for their endorsement for the piece. We want this piece to be a multi-contributor, multi-institutional piece. The collective voice of us as individuals and our institutions. So we feel it's really necessary to do that institutional round, getting the institutions on board and seeking their endorsement for the product. So that's going to take us to sort of June, throughout June, early June. And then, phase four should say the launch is happening in June. I'm not sure why May is in there, but we're going to launch in June once we have finished that institutional process. And then what's really important about this piece is that this will then be the key input to our big conference. We're having a conference towards the end of June called the Digital Planet for Sustainability. And this report will basically be the foundation report that will feed that conference. And the core goal of that conference is to transform this report into a joint acceleration plan and to come up with a commitment framework and to come up with a way of making pledges against this commitment framework that our different institutions can then take forward. So that's going to be the goal of the conference, is to transform the report into an action plan. And then hopefully the last phase is to launch this acceleration plan and to begin collecting concrete action pledges by Code's membership. And we're hoping to have that ready in September, and we're hoping to do that as part of a side event to the UN General Assembly. So that's how we're phasing this out over the next number of months. So now, on the basis of what you heard from Stephanie and on what you just heard from me, we want to do a quick poll just to see where the group is at. Does what has been presented make sense or not? So the first thing I want to know is, where are you based? How many countries do we have in the room, and where are you coming in from? So if you could quickly, in the Mentimeter, start entering your country of where you're based, just so we can get a sense of the diversity in the room, that would be fantastic. And we're going to let this run for about a minute as people come in. And as you know, the way this word map works is the largest country is obviously the biggest font. Sorry, the largest number of participants from a country is the largest font on the screen. And so right now we have a competition, I guess, not that we're competing, but between Canada and Germany, which is interesting to see, both leaders in this space. So I guess it's no surprise that they're significant in the group today. But I can see that Switzerland and I can see the US is also gaining ground. And it's just wonderful to see the diversity we have in the room. I'm going to let that run for a couple more moments, and then we'll continue. I'm sure that there are ways that that we can spread this diversity out over time, and that's one of the things we will be doing as part of this process. We'll be looking for gaps in the code's membership and trying to systematically plug those gaps. So if it's not as diverse as it needs to be yet, don't worry, it will be. Diversity is one of those key values that we really want to drive here. Thank you very much for participating in that first poll. I can see that Canada, Germany, Switzerland are coming out on top, but I'm also really delighted to see other countries represented, Kenya, Nigeria, Thailand, Peru, and Chile, Belgium, Zimbabwe, Peru, fantastic. I'm going to continue on through the poll so we can continue. So we're also looking to understand sort of what's the diversity of organization types that we have in the room. You know, what kind of organization are you currently working for, and do we have a broad range of the organizations we really want to be in codes? So if you could take another moment just to complete this, just to let us see, you know, what kind of diversity we have across the group, that would be wonderful. And I put an acronym in there. I'm sorry for doing that. I didn't have enough space, but SME is small and medium enterprise, just in case that acronym is not familiar to you. I'm hoping that journalist and media personality will come up, and that there are citizens in the group which aren't representing institutions. But if there are not, we'll actually have to reach out and plug that gap as well, because obviously we want to have some journalists and media in the room. But this is already looking good. I can see international organizations are clearly overrepresented in some ways, which is not unexpected. But clearly there are a number of gaps we need to fill. I'm particularly happy to see the Indigenous group is coming up. That makes me really happy. I've seen other situations where that's a major gap, so I'm happy to see we have some representation there. And I can see that there is a gap in the journalist media side still, and so that's obviously something we're going to have to fill. Let me continue with the poll, and a few more questions to go, and then we'll break out into our working groups. So again, we're trying to understand, you know, across the environmental and digital transformation value chain, where do you work in these different areas? You know, are you working on data, analytics, digital infrastructure, applications, or platforms? Just to get us a sense, and you might be working on all of them. But is there one particular area you have, you know, most work on? It would be just really great to see what kind of diversity we have here and what the spread looks like. It's really interesting from my side that the platforms is obviously outshining the other ones. I was kind of anticipating the data side would be overwhelming, but this is really interesting. Of course, in my view, the platforms are probably where we can have the most influence in terms of consumer behaviors, or users on those platforms, and how we can begin to use digital tools to accelerate sustainable lifestyles and behaviors. So it's great to see we have many colleagues from the platform world looking forward to your advice on how we harness that potential. And interestingly, that balance on the other one is phenomenal. I mean, it's almost equal distribution across, it's now equal, thank you, equal distribution across the 4 elements. So that's fantastic. I'm going to move on, two more poll questions, and then we're finished. So this is a slider. There are 4 slider questions here, and we want to understand what you think about what you've heard so far. And so you have to drag the slider across the screen, and there are 4 questions here. The first one is, yeah, the co-design process makes sense to me. If that's the case, slide it to the right. The second question, the draft report structure, yeah, it makes sense. You know, strongly agree, disagree, or somewhere in the middle. The core values that Stephanie presented, yeah, they resonate. They sound like they sound good. And then finally, the strategic areas of the report. Yeah, they also resonate. So if you could just let us know, what side of this scale you're falling on, just to give us a general sense. Are we on track? Or are we did we completely miss this? So I'll give you a couple more seconds to finish this one. I'm not sure what's going on the screen. I can see there's some kind of weird 3, 1, 8, 27, 33. I don't know what that is. That's not normal. But we're going to ignore that and just focus in on 4.2, 3.8, 4.1, and 3.8. And what this is telling me is that we probably need to do a little bit more work on the structure. Obviously it's positive, but it's down a little bit. So maybe we have to look at the structure. And then the second thing is the strategic areas. That's also a little bit lower. And we look forward to hearing how we can improve those strategic areas. And we'll be doing that together very soon in these breakout groups. So thank you for that quick poll. Obviously that makes my heart very happy. And I'm sure all the co-champions are at least pleased with this initial result. And obviously, as I said, this is just a starting point, but we're very happy that it's starting to resonate and we're sort of probably on the right track. That's great. Okay, so we're going to do one final word cloud, and Stephanie provided a set of values that are in the report, and we just, wanted your feedback on, is any value missing that you identified immediately, or a big idea that you didn't see Stephanie mention. So again, this is a word cloud. If you just want to start throwing your ideas in there, that would be great for just us to get a sense of what's missing. Oh my goodness, environment's missing. That's shocking. I'm hoping it's not, but we'll have to understand what that means. And sustainability design, that's a really good point. Yeah, we have to try to weave that in more systematically, clearly. But these are some great ideas coming in, and I'm sure Jason and Stephanie are really looking at this going, wow, this is awesome. But yeah, a wonderful set of ideas and values coming in. Keep them coming. We're going to keep this open for another 30 seconds or so. I do think I'm seeing some issues come in. I do think gender is nicely covered in the report. I think we've done a lot of work to try to weave that in really well. So I'm hoping once you see the detail, you'll see it there. It's interesting that biodiversity is coming out as like a major theme. That's to some extent that's alarming that we don't have that covered in the presentation, but hopefully we've got it covered in the report. Because obviously, that is an issue we all care very deeply about, and same with environment. So hopefully once you get into the details, some of these perhaps apparent gaps from the presentation will be plugged. But this is really fantastic and wonderful to see these ideas coming in. Boy, this just warms my heart to see this kind of engagement and all these, these great concepts coming in. I think there's one there, I saw actionability. Gosh, that is like the most important part of what we're trying to do here, transforming this report into action. I totally agree that actionability has to be kind of a driving principle across this whole process. I'm going to stop there. I think we've got a lot of ideas, wonderful ideas, and we'll continue this brainstorming in the actual breakout groups. So we're not on we're not in a Peloton session here. These are breakout groups, not workout groups. Okay, I think this is the last slide. At an individual or institutional level, will you help to transform this report into an acceleration plan and commitment framework? Where do you now, now that you see where we're going, now that you see some of the content, where do you stand? And don't be afraid. If your answer is no, that's fine. If you're still on the fence, if you're waiting and seeing, that's great. I just want to get a sense, where people stand, and if we're offering a convincing narrative on where we want to go. So continue. We'll let this go for a bit. I see a great, clustering around. I want to engage. Obviously, that's fantastic. That's what we want to hear. And obviously, if you don't want to engage, there's an individual that has a big fat no. I want to know why. So eventually, you know, reach out to me or reach out to one of the co-champions and just let us know, what did we say that that doesn't resonate and that doesn't want to facilitate your engagement. I'm going to stop this one now. I can see there's a good distribution, and you know, we've got some work to do in terms of people that are waiting and seeing, and that's fine. I think that's completely normal. So, but hopefully, you know, as the weeks progress, we can transform those wait and sees into, yeah, I want to engage, or yeah, I want to co-lead. So I think we wanted to finish this, finish the poll, but I wanted to offer an opportunity for any questions of clarification, and that's either to me or to the drafting team. Anything I've said that needs to be clarified, or anything that Stephanie said. I wanted to, you know, have a very quick, you know, 5-minute exchange. Does anything need to be clarified? And this is not the moment to give more ideas. It's not the moment to provide feedback on the report. Just to clarify. Will this group meet regularly? Yes, it will meet regularly, and we have these two kinds of modalities. One will be online through the SparkBlue platform, and we're aiming to have these kind of roundtables every quarter. So yes, we're aiming to have another roundtable once we progress to the next draft, the next version. We're aiming to have another roundtable, report back to you on major changes, and then obviously continue these roundtables every quarter to really make sure this is dynamic and we're a part of this together. But obviously we'll also be doing a lot of online conversations through the SparkBlue platform and receiving probably the lion's share of the feedback through SparkBlue. And that's really why we've used the SparkBlue platform, because it was designed for this kind of multi-stakeholder, bottom-up, global kind of consultation. And we're really excited to be using it and seeing, you know, how it can drive this collective intelligence process. And if you haven't been a part of a collective intelligence process, they're probably the funnest thing you can do if you're a policy wonk. You know, having thousands of inputs from around the world, from all this, you know, diversity of people and expertise is phenomenal. It's really a phenomenal experience, and one of the things I love doing in the UN. So certainly we're going to see how SparkBlue works for this, and how we can run this intelligence process through it. I'm going to ask if there are any more questions. I'm going to mark as answered. Yes. What's the time commitment if we get involved? That's really up to you. I mean, how long is a piece of string in many ways, right? You can review the report and provide, you know, general feedback, detailed feedback. I think that the key thing about, you know, once we get to the action plan or the acceleration plan, then there is some serious time commitment. What we'll be asking members for is obviously a specific pledge against the action plan, and then to implement that pledge over a year, right? So there will be a time commitment coming, and there will be a very specific pledge. The hope is that codes will actually lightly monitor that pledge and make sure that those pledges are actually being transformed into action on the ground. What would be our measures of success? Exactly that: measurable action on the ground and mobilization of a combination of political will and financial resources. And we're talking, you know, influencing financial resources in excess of, you know, trillions is our goal, right? How do we start shifting trillions of dollars towards this outcome? How do we start shifting hundreds of millions or billions of users towards sustainable products and services influenced by digital pathways? How do we start to transform hundreds of millions of products and their supply chains? So we're talking about big numbers here, big, hairy, audacious goals is our goal, and really trying to shift sectors and shift or catalyze sectoral transformation. I think the other measure of success, and this goes back to the values, is inclusion and diversity, right? We want this to be inclusive, we want it to be global, we want it to be diverse, and we want people, you know, in the membership to co-own this. We really want everybody to feel proud that this reflects their collective voice. And so, you know, if I got an email this morning, for example, from a colleague who read the report, and she said, look, this report made me remember why I joined the UN. And that was just like, wow, wonderful. That's just a perfect example of kind of the pride and the the transformative nature that we can drive with this kind of piece. So I think we've answered the questions. I've reached the end of the presentation, and I think it's time now to pitch it back over to, I think, Rob, and then over to Rena to lead the roundtables.
Thank you so much, David. I mean, fascinating leveraging of technology there to get quick group sourcing of ideas and reactions. So that's fantastic. And thanks all of you for participating and jumping into that and giving your best ideas. So now, yes, we're going to turn over and do the breakout groups, or we'll be able to have a chance to exchange with one another. And for that, I'm happy to turn over to Reina Otsuka. Reina is the Digital Innovation Specialist for the Nature, Climate, and Energy team at UNDP. Otsuka-san, over to you.
Thank you, Rob. Hi, everybody. My name is Reina, as Rob introduced, and I will be basically explaining to you how the next part of this session will work, which is a group work, and we will go into small breakout rooms so that you have a chance to interact and also brainstorm. So now after this, I'm not if everybody is familiar with the Zoom breakout groups. We have assigned each one of you to a different room. So after this, you will be prompted to join a breakout room. If that comes, please do just click on it, and then you will just be transferred to the room directly. And once you get there, there will be facilitators that will be facilitating your room. So please follow the direction of the facilitators. The general structure will be that we will start from a silent brainstorming Miro, and the facilitators will also share with you, each of you, the links. So I will come back to the Miro and explain a little bit how it works. And so once you get there, there will be, and then you just do the silent brainstorm and then go into a verbal discussion. And after these breakout groups, I think it will last for around 45 minutes, if I'm correct. We will come back to the plenary, and each group should have assigned one person to report back to the plenary in 3 minutes per group. So that will be the general structure. Now, so the discussion topic will be, what are the key values for you that can be actually a common value for all to achieve environmental digital sustainability? So you heard Stephanie and Jason basically propose a few values that the drafting team thought are valuable, but we are by no means tied to that. If all of you can please elaborate on what you think is a value, why do you think it's important for you, or for the people that you care for, or your institution, we do want to hear about it. So that will be the main focus of this breakout room. There will be 3 ground rules. One is, please do build on other people's ideas. Second, these groups are supposed to be a safe space. So please refrain yourself from making judgments on other people's ideas. We really want to keep this a safe place for everybody. And thirdly, if you have a question on the process or anything outside of this theme, there will be a parking lot in the right-hand corner of this Miro whiteboard. So please feel free to also post it there so that all of us can go back and look at it there. I see a question. Can you please put focus of breakout room in the chat? Also, oh, okay, sure. We will try to, we'll communicate in when you get there. So, and then now I'm just going to share my screen, and let's see if everybody is actually already familiar with Miro. If not, this is how it looks like. And I will just explain again, only 3 very basic functions that this have. You will probably see something like this. And so this is David's group's board. I'm just going to use this as an example, but when you get there, 3 things. The first important thing is to be able to zoom in and out. How do you zoom in? You can basically press your control button and use your scroll on the mouse and just scroll, you can just zoom in and out. If you don't have access to a scroller for any reason, you can also use this on the right bottom corner. There is a smaller square, if you can see. You can also just press on the plus button to zoom in or minus button to zoom out. So this is how it works. Secondly, how do you want to move your screen? Now you see that my cursor is a hand. There's this arrow here on the left left-hand corner, well, left-hand side of the board, if you select this and it turns into a hand, that's when you can actually grab and move the screen. So you can just basically grab the screen and then zoom in like this to the board that you're working on. Thirdly, we will use sticky notes. So you see that on this board, you already see a lot of sticky notes here. To write on this, you can just select it like I did right now, like this, and then double click, and then you'll see there's a text. So I'm just going to make, I just typed in, and here we go. So you'll be able to type in like this pretty easily. I'm sure there's a lot of you in this group that are familiar with Miro. If you see any fellow group members struggling, please do volunteer to help out. Also, just to mention, if you're joining this from your phone, you will not be able to do this on your phone, most likely. In that case, please feel free to write your answers in the chat box. And again, if there are people familiar with Miro board in the group, please do help to transcript that into these sticky notes. And a note to facilitators, please just remind your group members to volunteer on that. So that's how it works. Also, Miro could be heavy in some regions. If that's the case, please just close it off and concentrate on your Zoom, on the Zoom, because sometimes it does crash when you're using both Zoom and Miro. And again, in that case, please, others help and try to be inclusive of those people as well. So this is the basic. And we will be recording in your room. So if you feel uncomfortable being recorded, please just tell the facilitator and we can remove you to a waiting room. So in case that happens, please just let us know. So I'm just going to introduce the facilitators. All facilitators, please put your cameras on. And if you can wave when I call your name, please do. So the first group will be led by David. You all know, so David Jensen from UNEP. The second group will be by Christian Loh and Dirk Osiek from the German Environment Agency. The third group will be Mega Sud and Jeffrey Bolton from the International Science Council. And fourth group will be Stephanie Taylor from UNDP and Jason Jabor from UNEP. The fifth group will be Elian Ubalijoro, as you all know, and then Nilufar Sabet, both from Future Earth. So there will be 5 groups. Manish, are we ready with the breakout rooms?
Yes, Zebi, will kindly start the breakout.
Okay, great. So we are now going to go to the break rooms. I'll be floating around, just like workshops, I'll just basically be walking around different rooms. So note to facilitators, again, if you face any technical problems, please just call out and I'll try to help out. Okay, so, all right, Manish, over to you. Please warp everybody to their breakout rooms. Okay, I think, Irvin, you were not transferred. Manish, can you please put Irvin, and I see June as well, into a group?
Yes, Marie has the host rights, right?
Okay, or Marianne. I see June and Laura. There's a Marco.
Yes, it's taking a while, but they should be assigned in a minute.
Okay.
Are, yes, definitely. I'm just going to send a message to everybody else.
Okay, great. I think we have the best Miro board, but I'm very curious to see what the other groups came up with. This is a competition, not that it's a competition, but it looks great.
I can't wait to see it.
Somebody had put in, what was the word, savory. We didn't get a chance to understand what that meant, but at some point I'd like to know what that meant. Anti-saviorism.
I did look it up and I put it in the diversity and equality because it seemed to be yeah, in that space.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob.
So 2 more minutes until everybody else.
Colin, let me just go back to your point about COP26. As far as I can see, the digital agenda of COP26 is also not very solidified. You know, how do we use digital technologies to accelerate climate action and to accelerate carbon data collection, carbon markets, carbon reporting, real-time information on the state of play? I haven't seen that yet, a very clear vision, and I don't know if you're a part of the preparatory process, if you could share your views on what the digital vision is for COP26 and how they want to use digital tools to accelerate action.
It's from what I can gather, oh boy, I've asked, there's a guy called Martin Valenti, gentleman from Scottish Enterprise, seconded from the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency, who's basically front running a lot of the COP26 stuff. The whole approach is good news only. We only want good news. And his posts are all on LinkedIn about good news, fantastic things to celebrate today. We cannot get there with just good news. Yes, there's lots of vaccination happening in the developed world, but India is a mess, as a parallel on COVID. So the good news doesn't work. Scotland itself has done amazing things on renewable power, but there is no roadmap going forward. We desperately need a global roadmap that says, if the discussion is just, we need to shift ESG and we need to do this and more reporting, meanwhile, we're increasing our GHGs every year. I liken it to the European Super League and that kind of discussion that was going on at levels that people feel that they're not part of. But, how was it that within 2 days or something of the announcement of the European Super League, it disappeared? My perception and most people outside of their corporate jobs is that, you can talk about sustainability as long as we perpetuate the myth that if each corporation reduces its damage a little bit every year, somehow the planet is going to restore itself enough to support us. And that's just it's just a terrible myth. It's 40, 50 years out of date, but it's still the overriding conversation every day on LinkedIn and in most discussions. So I don't see that Scotland has a digital, platform policy in place. I don't see youth involvement or female involvement at anything like the levels it needs to be at to have any success out of COP26, I have to say.
Totally agree. I'm going to put Pierre on the ask if Pierre wants to take the floor, put him on the spot. Pierre, I see in the chat that you're agreeing. We're waiting for the colleagues to come back into the plenary. Do you want to take the floor and share a perspective on this?
Yeah, David, I think we really need to, I agree completely with Colin that we need to be very honest with ourselves about the challenges that we're facing. If I go back to the GEO and the IPCC reports, my whole life revolves around those reports, and the scale of the challenge that those reports highlights is incredible. It's never been done in human history. This 3 to 5 times decarbonization rate. We have to, the fact that we probably need to reduce the environmental impact of food production by 70% if we're going to reach our biodiversity targets and our climate targets. These are monstrously large challenges. And we need all the bullets. We need digitization, we need co-development, we need collective action, we need behavioral change, we need all sorts of things to be able to make this happen. And if we can realistically change people's worldview that humans or humanity and nature should live on the same plane, should be of equal importance, then I think we can get there. But that's a major change in worldview. That's certainly not been the worldview for the last 500 years. So the SG's remarks are absolutely on point. We have to make peace with nature, and humanity and nature have to be on the same plane. But that's a major change in worldview. And we have to get the majority of the world to believe that in order for us to reach these targets.
Thanks, Pierre. That's sobering. I think, of course, I think there's other colleagues in the room that have been a part of the GEO process. I know Christian has been a long-term involvement in GEO. I think the other challenge we face is exactly that communication challenge. The sky is falling. Although it is falling, it's a difficult message to empower people. And I think that's why we're constantly looking for, messages of hope and messages of engagement and empowerment. And we need to figure out how do we encourage and empower people to take action without depressing them with the magnitude of the change that is before us. That's the challenge I think we face.
Oh, David, in case you didn't notice, we're back in the main room.
I'm noticing now colleagues are coming in. We were just bantering and having an exchange, waiting for everybody to come back. Welcome back, colleagues. And Rena, please go ahead.
Great, thank you, David. So thank you so much for all the great conversations. I kind of passed through a lot of rooms, and there was a lot of great conversations going on. So we'll just do the 3 minutes report back to the plenary, and we'll just go, by groups from 1 to 5, if that's okay. So we'll start from David Group. If you can.
Great.
Yeah.
Should I kick off, David?
Please go ahead, Rob.
Okay, so I think that my first comment is Miro is a great tool, but watching 100 little post-it notes fly across the board, trying to kind of create a structure from it was a challenge. But great conversation. I think kind of where we ended up with was it's just a massive change. So the focus on ambition and urgency, a recognition that it wasn't just around environment and digital, but it involved economic evolution, fairness for all, mass engagement, needing to make sure that people felt empowered, believed that there could be a reality of change rather than it being words, as it maybe has been perceived over a number of years. Focusing absolutely on things like accountability, responsibility, ownership to drive things differently. The necessity to engage with people, communicate effectively, communicate strategically, communicate tactically, to enable people to collaborate in an effective way. If we move to the right-hand side of the board and the areas, there was a lot of focus around inclusion and accessibility, making sure that all parts of society, no matter where they were in the world, no matter what access they did or did not have to technology, were able to engage, able to feel part of making a difference. Big focus around diversity, equality, age, gender, race, whatever people's background was, how were they engaged, how were their voices heard? And in a way that was very much open, transparent, engendering trust, belief across those communities. In light of that, there was a number and a discussion around that openness and trust and the need to have this co-collaborative innovation, but to do so in a way where people were absolutely focused around ethics, digital ethics, use of data, use of AI in an appropriate, permissible way, reducing harm. Now, then there was a lot of there's a number of areas around technology, not just technology in organizations or but also the way in which that technology is used, principles, standards, open source, innovation, thinking about the impact of the environment of that technology, but also very much thinking about the impact on the environment as in positively by using those technologies in positive, constructive ways. Importantly, it being real, tangible, different, measurable, with linking to effectively the SDGs so that there was visibility of that progress. And again, it wasn't about pretty reports, it was about driving dramatic ambition, change at a global scale. So I think that summarizes the conversations. But David, is there anything that you would add to that?
I think you did a fantastic job. Thanks, Rob. I think maybe afterwards we'll have another round of contributions, but I think that was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you marked the 3 minutes almost precisely. So thank you very much. Yeah, in fact, we can invite others in the same group if you want to add anything else. We're all good?
Excuse me.
Yes,
Hello. Yes. I just want to comment a little bit on what our colleague just highlighted. What about the impact of technology on the people themselves, the end users? So can we also have a mechanism where these end users as well can be teach how to use, after all that we have been illustrated? So can you also have a mechanism where the impact, the end users can also be taught because how to use the technology itself, because this will also negatively impacted on them. You talked about people living in the rural area who have never had access to technology before. So I think there should be also some mechanism that can help them to use this technology to get trained in order to fulfill their will, yes. So also the maintenance, all those functionality should also be included. Back to you, the audience.
I agree with that. And I mean, there was a post-it note around addressing digital poverty. For me, that's not just about a laptop or connectivity. It's what you do with that and how you get access to understanding the art of the possible and training and education and that whole piece, as you so rightly say. I agree.
Great, thank you so much. That was a good intervention. All right, well, moving on to group 2, which was led by Christian and Dirk. Who will be the
I will make the presentation on the group. We were asked several times, but they trust us to give a short picture of the discussion. I will say that 6 points we will take up from the discussion. Thank you very much to everybody. I think we had very great discussions. And the first point was the conceptual framing of our basic understanding of technology and digitalization. I think we see in the group, or there was a strong message that we have to put on the first hand the digital human interrelations and their dynamics, and on the secondly to understand these in a broader context of digitalization and modernization of society, not only from a technical point of view, but also in a kind of a new equation. It is not anymore, I will say, the equation to look to digital and environment. I think we have a double equation. The double equation is how justice and the digital divide can be interwoven in this baseline equation of digitalization and environment. This brings us to the third point, that when we create the value-based approach in the report, we have to check the vertical lines and the horizontal lines, because the nexus of digitalization and sustainability change this coordination system. On the one hand, the question of what is global and what is local tomorrow, under the expression of further digitalization and internet. But on the other hand, how to increase the local to become global in terms of a new equity, to create more justice in terms of bringing 2 billion people into the society back, in the digital society. Then there was a discussion on the values in terms of that transparency for example, could be a priority value. That means how to shape transparency of these developments, of these, not only the report itself, it means how to increase transparency and the trust mechanism in society. In this interaction of environment and digitalization on the one hand, but also relation to the justice question. The fourth point was bringing a little bit more a broader perspective of how the technology-human interactions will dedicate to the SDG framework in itself. To go a little bit further into these interactions and the possible chance and opportunities. Yes, 70 minutes. Then I think a very important discussion was the governance. I see, thanks you, Rainer. The governance. So building from values into the governance. And then there was a minor point is how to deal with the cybersecurity issue of the agenda. So what is the cyber security approach for a digital planet for sustainability? That was my last point. Thank you for the group. Thank you for the discussion.
Great, thank you so much, Christian and the group members. Anybody else from the group that wants to comment on this? Anything to add from group 2? Okay, it seems we're all good. Let's move on to group 3 then. I think it was led by Mega and Jeffrey. The reporter, please do put on unmute yourself. And I can share the screen, the Miro board as well. Mega, do you know who's reporting back from your team?
Yes, it's Franco.
Sorry, my apologies.
There you are.
Yes, I was looking for the buttons, and now I lost the video. There we go.
We can see you.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I'll try to give it justice, but there were a lot of very interesting and discussions, very active group. Generally, I think some of the topics the group really cared about was the justice and bridging the digital divide. In particular, when it comes to knowledge and technology transfer, we wanted to make sure that countries that don't have the same capacity or are marginalized, also because of the overrepresentation of science from the global north, are actually included into the discussions and actually have the benefits, enjoy the benefits of the digital the digitalization. And with that, we also need to be careful about the discussion on appropriation of and the colonization of the system, where we see that, for instance, the global north might be able to produce in a certain way or enjoy certain types of technologies, while the south not so much. And to solve some of these issues, I think the value of participation is very important. So kind of trying to make sure that we don't have a technocentric value system, but we look at citizens and participation of people in general, making sure that we have inclusions and local empowerment, and we raise indigenous voices as well. So it's not just about the scientific aspect of it, but it's also about the local voices and how the digital system actually is connected then to citizen engagement and citizen science as well, because there are going to be aspects of data provision that are not going to be able to be provided by the system itself. And then, of course, there is the discussion on sustainability and sufficiency. So if we want to have this type of system change, we also need to think about implementability. We need to have a proactive and not reactive approach to sustainability issues. And we should not just digitalize just to digitalize for the technology's sake, but actually being purpose-driven in that sense. And think about also other approaches that are not necessarily sectoral based, but more of a broader approach. And throughout this this discussion, there was a lot of emphasis was given also to the aspect of educations and science-driven aspect. And one thing that that was discussed was how do we mitigate the negative effects, both from learning from past experiences, but also making sure that a skepticism about the system, but about also the type of also data in general is maintained within the system, and all this discussion, of course, also has to do with digital well-being and better understanding on how we use technology, the digital technology in general. I think. And there was also discussion, of course, on transparency and open source and open data that was seen as crucial. But I think that is mostly our points. I hope I give it justice.
Great, thank you so much. That was a very rich conversation, I can see. Anybody from the same group that wants to add anything? Good. Yeah, there's a lot of points covered. Thank you so much. Okay, so
Rena, I see a hand from Tim Frick.
Okay, great,
I'm
thanks.
not sure. Tim, did you want to say something?
I was just applauding. Thanks for that. That was great. That was great, Franco.
That's great. Okay, all right. So fourth group, Stephanie and Jason's group.
Okay, so I don't think we came to any decision on a report back. And so if there are no objections, I could give it a go, but I would invite others. I'm going to be brief and invite others to build on sort of my interpretation and reflections of what we've said. So I think a lot of the points that have been discussed there's some commonalities with what's going on in our board and the conversations we were having. Very similar. We had a lot of coalescence around issues of equity, justice, fairness, access, accessibility, and tied closely to that, the issues around open data, open source. We had this interesting, and I'll say, and I think maybe this echoes what other people are saying as well. We sort of had this push and pull between means and ends in terms of how values are situated. And questions around how the report envisages values, and I think that's an important point. We didn't come to any conclusions, but we certainly had some interesting ideas. One of the things that came up, there was an interesting intervention on from sort of a private sector voice, if I can say, around the idea that these profit-centric models are no longer viable. And I thought that was interesting. And there was, again, this is sort of my interpretation as well, so others come in and course correct, but this notion that value seems to be, as a business model, value seems to have moved away from our values, and whether or not we're coalescing around a common set of values or not, that's one issue to deal with. But then this notion of differentiating value from values was something I think we were grappling with. I don't want to be repetitive with the other groups, but there was a lot of discussion around the word trust doesn't appear on our board. I think we have 56 sticky notes, and I don't see the word trust. But to me, I really felt like that was the essence of the conversation. There needs to be something is bubbling up around where we go from here and how we build trust and the role of digital. And as we kind of come to this nexus of environmental sustainability and digitalization, where is trust in all of this? And so I invite others on that note to come in and maybe add to what I've said and or correct my interpretations of what I thought was a really, really healthy and very, very useful exercise.
Great, thank you, Jason. Anybody from this same group who wants to add? I was actually hovering in this group for a while. It was a very interesting conversation. Everybody's okay? Oh, Marcel.
Maybe.
Please.
Yeah. Maybe just to reflect a little bit on two more meta questions, which might be relevant to enhance the report further. Like we also discussed whether or not to draw some boundaries, right? Whether to focus on more ecological consequences and interrelationships with digital change, and how to deal with like issues of social cohesion, maybe even dignity popped up a couple of times on our note sticks. And I think this is a very relevant question also, whether or not to sort the different values and what's the purpose of this values approach, right? To make that really clear and to kind of clarify it in the beginning, why they are important to the report. Are these core values that are contested? Are these values that will be needed to manage digital change towards sustainability, etc.? Like these more meta questions are also, I guess, important to think about, and that was part of the discussion as well.
Great, thank you so much for adding that, Marcel. Okay, we're moving on to the last group, Eliane and Nilu's group. Who will be the reporter?
I volunteered to do that, but I didn't realize I was going to be after all these amazing presentations. So I will try to begin.
No pressure.
So it might be useful just to share our board for like the others have. There we go. Excellent. So we covered a great many issues. There were 17 of us that met and explored this. Some of the broad areas that we saw that were grouped together included issues around inclusion, justice, and openness. We saw that there was a lot of overlap between them, and it was really interesting to go off and to see how we were able to group those ideas together. There are also other elements that came out around indigenous sovereignty. I loved the point about the donut economy. I really love that model, and seeing that come forward by somebody else as one of their 3 points was really quite nice to see. The effort for skills and development and learning was also one that was raised. That was separate from the sort of ones that were sort of main grouped issues, but also, and this came up in the conversation afterwards, the whole importance of ongoing education, trying to make sure that we were able to keep ensuring that the humanity is able to keep up the technology and the changes that are happening around them. Transparency in the business models and collaboration between public and private sectors were also raised. I think if there's more openness about how government and business are able to collaborate together, then this can be a more productive and more effective relationship for everyone. There is also a real tension between sustainability and also the drive to buy the latest thing. There are just so much initiative to try and to sell people the next iPhone, and so we need more companies like the B Corp Fairphone that are trying to go off and make your tools be upgraded and be maintained over time, and something where you don't need to simply replace the whole device every year or two. We saw that there were many good examples of, we saw that there were not many good examples of sustainable ICT adoption. We didn't find, there were certainly some that people were able to go off and to highlight, but it wasn't something that was easy to ring off the top of our heads, aside from perhaps the announcements made by big multinationals that made grand commitments towards sustainability efforts. We found that thinking smaller and finding ways to engage with local community groups like Girls Who Code was one way to try and inspire change and inspire and raise awareness about this issue. We also saw that there was a lack of leadership and a real opportunity to try and change that within the United Nations. The United Nations has a great role and a huge a huge soapbox to stand on to talk about this issue and to raise awareness and to also put the procurement dollars that the UN has into making sure that this is something that they're enacting these principles. We saw that there was an opportunity to inspire advocacy and outreach frameworks, and that by designing a framework, we can disseminate information into the digital spaces and both engage with users and try and bring together action and collaboration around the changes that we need to make around the technology. I did forget to mention civic tech in our presentation.
Okay, Mike, I'm going to cut you off because it's over the 3 minutes.
Okay.
But I will give you the chance for your teammates to speak if anything was missing. Does anybody want to add?
I just want to
Go ahead.
I just wanted to briefly add, I actually saw this on the previous Miro boards, and this was also a point that I had brought up, but the notion of data privacy and upkeeping the SDG 16, along with the need to collect data. Data is integral to this transformation that we're speaking to. And so we know that big tech companies are, of course, trying to adjust to changing policies regarding data protection, but in many places around the world, especially the global south, big tech companies are still exploiting data privacy, and even here. So that's definitely another point that I just wanted to raise.
Great, thank you so much. Great points. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody, because we can't applaud, and I'm sure we all want to give ourselves a big round of clap. Why don't we do something called the word waterfall? I don't know if you've heard of this, but think of one word that you feel right now, and we're gonna type it into the chat box, but don't press the send button yet. And we're just going to, on the count of 3, we're just all going to type in whatever word that's in our mind right now. Are you ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3. I love this, yeah. Yeah, diversity inspired, urgency, woohoo. Yeah. Great, I see a lot of nice words coming in. Wonderful, all right. Thank you so much, everybody, for the great conversation, the great discussions, and the very inspiring presentations. It's so interesting how each group had very diverse conversations. That's exactly, the reason why we want to do this collective intelligence work. And I'll pass the floor to David and Jason to just do a quick recap of the next steps of what's going to happen with all of these ideas that we collected today, and then we can go on to closing. All right, the floor is yours, Jason and David.
David, do you want to start, or should I?
Sure. I think what I tried to articulate earlier is that this is the start of this collective intelligence process, and we really appreciate everything that's come out already today. What we're doing is we're creating a discussion group in the Spark Blue platform within the codes community. There's a dedicated discussion group. We'll put it in the chat link, and that's where we've posted the draft report, and that's where we're asking 5 further follow-up questions about the report. Feel free to, whatever feedback you want to share, please do. We're trying to guide that feedback with those 5 questions, but everything is on the table. So I would really encourage people to use that facility to share further points. If you want to get in touch directly and with any of us and have a further discussion, please feel free. We're really trying to do this in a collective intelligence way, a bottom-up way, and be as inclusive and diverse and reflective as we can. That's going to last for about 2 weeks, I think it's until the 21st of May. We will then iterate the draft, and what we'll try to do is be very transparent about everything that was collected and which comments we were able to take on board and which we were not, and why. It may be that some comments are out of scope. It may be that for some reason or another, we couldn't include them, but we'd like to be as transparent as possible in terms of why and what we did include, so everybody can see the process. We'll then iterate the draft on the basis of those comments. And then, as I said, we're going to do an institutional consultation. So we'll reach out to some of the big entities who are working in this space that we would like to eventually endorse the report. And that's both on the public side as well as on the private sector side. So we will be doing some, one-to-one consultations with a number of groups. For example, the International Telecommunications Union is a massive player in this particular space. We really want them on board. We want to be a part of the process together. We'll be reaching out directly to them to look at the content and to reflect some of their views as well. So we will be doing that throughout June. And as I said, we're going to try to finalize this towards the end of June, and then we will use this piece as the major input to this conference that we're hosting. We're planning to host at the end of June. The conference is, of course, called the Digital Planet for Sustainability, and that's where we will then try to transform this into this action plan or this acceleration plan we've been talking about. So those are the milestones from here on in. Jason and Stephanie, as you've met, are the key. They've been the key authors and editors and coordinators of this process. So Jason and Stephanie, do you want to share any final remarks on the process as you see it and how you plan to take inputs forward?
Sure, and Stephanie sends her apologies. She had to leave us for a doctor's appointment. But let me just add on what you've said, David. I think, yeah, you said it quite eloquently, and your opening was very. It was a great way to set the tone. I felt that this was a great, energized group. I'm hoping that is proof positive that you will remain engaged, because that is our intention. We would like everyone here and beyond to really feel ownership of this. I think that what's coming out for me is that issues of voice and representation in this moment that we're in are really, really important. And so the way that we're kind of approaching this report, if you will, and eventually this acceleration plan is kind of experimental by design, and we're all kind of learning as we go in this digital posture, the teachers call it. But my word was gratitude, and I saw a lot of similar sentiments. I think that I just want to express a great deal of gratitude from I think all of us who kind of represent this zero order draft that we're calling it. It is imperfect. It is a bit makeshift, but makeshift as it is, it still is. And so please feel free to engage, reach out to myself, to Stephanie, to David, to others, and we will continue to refine this with your help, and we will stay focused on seizing the opportunity. So that's it for me.
Great, thank you, Jason. All right, so we will close off this this group work part, and I'll pass it to Dirk Messner. He is one of the co-champions from the German Environment Agency. Dirk, over to you for closing this session.
Yeah, thank you very much, Reina. Thank you very much to all of you. Colleagues, in the name of our co-champions group, namely UNEP and UNDP, the International Science Council, the German Environment Agency, Future Earth, and the Ministry for Environment of Kenya, I would like to thank you very much for your participation. We had around 130 colleagues in the room, and I must say I listened into and zoomed into several working groups, very rich discussion, high diversity of opinions, which is very good, multi-perspectivity when it comes to sectors which intervened or disciplines which have been taking part in our discussion here. So thank you very much for that. I wanted to recap a bit what I listened to and what I heard during the deliberations of the last 2 hours or so. And firstly, I would like to formulate a big thank to the welcome remarks of Mrs. Yu Ping from the UN Office of the Tech Envoy. It is for us very important that this initiative, the CODES process, which you are now part of, is anchored and deeply anchored and connected with the Secretary General's roadmap on digital cooperation. We want to contribute to exactly that. And I also wanted to remember you that we understand the deliberations here in the context of CODES. We understand those as part of a global debate about the future of digitalization and the future of sustainability in the digital age. And maybe you listened to the discussions in the General Assembly 2 weeks ago or so. Elaine, you have been part of that. You are in the middle of my screen here. And it's good to see you again, of course. You made wonderful contributions in this discussions during the General Assembly. And my summary of that, and I think that we are trying to build on these discussions and develop this further. No? My summary of the General Assembly actually are the following 4 points, and this appeared again and again also in our deliberations. No, firstly, many people are arguing that digital connectivity and access of all people to digital infrastructures, this could be a main mechanism, maybe the key mechanism for successful cooperation worldwide and successful cultures of cooperation. No? So this is the first element which has been mentioned again and again. Most speakers talked about without digital innovations and without bringing these two transformations, the digital one and the sustainability one together, we will not get the 2030 agenda right. No? We also listened again and again that we have to learn quickly how to create a green and environmentally sound digital economy and society, because we are not at all there. No? And we also listened, and this was the first point which has been emphasized often during the General Assembly's discussion, this is all about justice. No? So digital divides, digital inequalities, and therefore moving towards digital justice, this is a major issue. No? The second element which I wanted to add is, Elaine, in your remarks at the very beginning today of our deliberations, no? You mentioned planetary boundaries, tipping points, the Earth system, inequalities, disparities. We need to be quick in moving forward and bringing these two major transformations together. Elaine, this is what you brought to us, no? And this is what we have to move forward now. I mean, if you look at our report, we are trying to do 3 things in learning and understanding better how to move forward. No? To get a good report, to get a good roadmap, we need to understand what's going on. So this report is mainly about 3 things. The first is that we try to understand hard how digital innovations, digital sustainability dynamics, sustainable development, governance systems, norms, how all these kind of things belong together. And we had debates about this today. It is about complexity. It is about uncertainty. It is about understanding. No? And then the second element of the report, going beyond understanding, is that we need a good idea about where to go to. So we need a vision, no? A digital plan for sustainability. How should this look like? No? And then the third element of this report is about reflecting how to go from A to B. No? So we have described the situation. We have a certain vision. How to move towards this vision. This is about norms, values, governance, actor constellations, power, obviously, business concepts. This is what the report is about. And we had very good discussions about that. My third point is that listening to you in these different working groups, my understanding is that first, there is an emerging consensus on normative basic foundations. No, we brought to you at the beginning of the discussion, Stephanie listed the basic norms which we had in mind. No? We brought this to the discussions and to this debate this afternoon. And my feeling is that there is an emerging consensus. And even more important, maybe, there is a big consensus that this kind of normative foundations are key to build on those normative foundations pathways to change. No? So this is observation number 1. My observation number 2 is still a lot of work to do when it comes to the vision. I listen to many arguments, I listen to many elements. So we need a vision, but the vision is still in the making. And this is great. I mean, this is, as David said, the starting point of our deliberations. No? So the vision is still in the making, is my sense making. The third point here in this regard, listening to all of us in our debates, is that it is very challenging to think precisely and concretely on the missing links between what we know about the situation and our vision. This is about the pathway towards a new digital future. No? And this is what the action plan and the acceleration plan will be about. And there is a lot of work still needed in this regard. This is, I think, actually, this is the hardest work to do. And this will be about the next steps. No? David already talked about that. So, colleagues, let me come to an end. I would like to thank you again very warmly in the name of all of the co-champions. I also would like to thank all the co-champions, of course, to organize the whole process and the huge engagement to make all of these efforts happen. And as David already mentioned, I wanted to close with reminding you that building now on the report, which we are going to finalize with your help, with your comments, we are moving into the next phase of thinking very hard about the action plan, how to make things happen, most the hard part of the work. And this will be debated, the action plan will be debated during our global conference, which is taking place at the end of June. The 30th of June and the 1st of July, concretely. And in this gathering, for this gathering, we will invite stakeholders from around the world. So this will be academic institutions and organizations, business people, tech people, non-governmental organizations, international organizations, and we will focus during these 2 days on the acceleration and action plan itself. So again, thank you very much to all of you. Very good discussions today, very fruitful, a lot of creativity in the room. Let's move forward, and thanks again for all your efforts. I think this is the end. This is the end of our meeting today. Or do I hand back to anyone else? This does not seem to be the case. Okay, so then thank you very much. Wonderful event, everyone. And
thank you. Bye-bye
hope to
now.
see you soon again.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
For the next steps to do. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Wonderful, wonderful summary as always, Dirk. Wonderful summary, wonderful participation. It was great for everybody. It was just a wonderful event. Thank you so much.